Right now there are thousands of seemingly everyday people going about their lives. But these people are not ordinary in any sense of the word. In fact, they're undercover cops. They could be that guy you see at the bar, your neighbor, your school teacher, or any other person in your life. These all people have deep and in-depth backgrounds assigned to their characters, and they're playing a role. But these undercover police are all over your country and the world investigating crimes. But for the first time ever, undercover police have now answered some questions you've always pondered. I'm Charlie, and today we're going to look at undercover police answer questions you've always wanted to know. But before we get locked up, why not subscribe and press the notification bell too? The first question is, how do you deal with betrayal? One job of undercover police is to develop a relationship with whoever they're investigating. For example, a cop may have to develop a relationship with a gangster, or maybe they're going undercover in a radical gang. If this is the case, then they need to get to know all of the members very well, including the higher ups. But when this happens, there can be some issues. It's been known that undercover cops have spilled the beans about who they really are. They do this because they get so attached to who they're spending time with. And a lot of the time, because undercover cops are spending so much time with the person they're investigating, they develop an affection for them. But eventually they do have to betray this person as they're investigating them for criminal reasons. This means over the months or years they spend time with this person, they're collecting info and betraying them simultaneously. Oftentimes, undercover cops need psychological counseling to deal with this conflict. This not only occurs during the time they're undercover, but also afterwards. They may feel very guilty as the person they kind of saw as a friend is now behind bars. Just imagine you developing a great friendship with someone, and all that time you're also thinking you're going to put them in jail. It is an incredible inner turmoil and conflict, and that's why they often need psychological help. Next up is, what if you get uncovered? So what happens in the event of an undercover cop getting exposed somehow? Sometimes they may slip up and get investigated by the mob or the criminals they're investigating themselves. Or sometimes the people they're investigating pay the police and other police rat out on this undercover cop. This can be very dangerous as these cops are undercover with some scary people. In fact, recently there was a case in Texas where an undercover cop was found out and his life was taken. But what actually happens if an undercover cop gets exposed? Well, the first thing they need to do is get out of the situation immediately. They need to go to their local police station and make sure they're safe. They will then likely be held in a prison cell for their own safety or taken to a safe house. During this time, other police will need to swarm in on the network they've built. Because the criminals will now know that they've been spied on, they may try and make a run for it and fly out of the country. This means they need to be apprehended as soon as possible. That is, if the cop can get out of the situation at all. Undercover cops are trained very specifically. They'll have a whole backstory and an explanation for everything. So they may be able to talk their way out of it as they are professional talkers. But really their job is to make sure their safety is paramount and get out of the situation by all means necessary. Next up is, what if you get arrested? Obviously, an undercover cop's true identity is only known to a few people, and that does not include all police. So what if, when they're hanging out with criminals, they end up getting arrested themselves? You may think they would try and say to the cops arresting them, "Wait, I'm a cop too," but that's actually not what they do. Instead, they just play along with it. After all, the cops arresting them likely would not believe them. And also they'd run the risk of the person they're being arrested with finding out their true identity. Instead, they just play along with it and are taken into the jail cell. Then, when they're in an isolated room, they would make it clear to the cops that they need to speak with their lawyer. Their lawyer would actually be a cop and he would come and take him out of jail. But sometimes, in cases when this happens, undercover cops have to spend the night in jail. This would be to avoid arousing suspicion with the criminals they've infiltrated. Criminals may suspect something if they get out of jail so quickly. So that's why they may have to spend a night behind bars. And sometimes they're even punched by fellow cops to give them a black eye to make the impression they're not part of the police. This just shows the extreme dedication undercover cops have. And it also shows their #1 goal, which is to not be uncovered. Next up is, where do you live? Ever wonder where undercover cops live while they're doing their undercover work? Well, spoiler alert, they do not live with their family in their normal homes. First off, this could put them or their family, if they have one, in danger. Instead, when they're undercover, they have a whole different identity. It's kind of like how some actors really get into character and pretend to be that character when they're doing the role. Undercover cops are the same, as they have totally new identities. They get given a gigantic file all about their fake lives. This will have their fake name, backstory, childhood information, their fake graduation details, their fake family details, and they'll also be given a fake undercover house. This will likely be a house nearby to whoever they're spying on, and the place they live will also reflect who they're spying on as well. If they're spying on a bunch of dealers, they'll be given a poor drug's den, but if they're spying on mobsters, then they may be given a high-class house in a fancy area. These houses are pretty well furnished in case any of the people they're spying on come round. The people they're spying on may want to investigate the undercover officer themselves. So that's why they'll have staged photographs of them around their home. Also, if they're hanging out with dealers, they may have substances around their home, even though that's strictly forbidden. Really, none of it's real, and it's all for show in case someone tries to check them out if they suspect they're an undercover cop. Next up is, do you carry police equipment? Some people think that undercover cops are simply regular police who are wearing plain clothes, or maybe grow a beard and wear glasses. But this is a total myth. In a true undercover role, they do not carry any police equipment. This means they won't carry a firearm or a police ID. They won't even carry their own credit cards, they'll get all new ones with their fake name. Also, they're usually stationed in areas where they grew up. This is to save money on more training, but it does invite a lot of risk. Imagine an undercover cop sitting at a bar with a criminal they're talking to trying to get information out of. Then all of a sudden, a former high school classmate of theirs walks up and talks to them with their real name. This obviously would expose them instantly, which is why this is a big risk. That's why they try and become as undercover as possible. They may change their look, such as growing facial hair if they didn't have it already. But they also won't carry any police credentials in case they get checked on the spot by the people they're investigating. And the only weaponry they'll carry is illegal stuff given to them by their criminal friends. Next up is, who do you speak to? If you think an undercover cop simply goes home to their family and hangs out like normal, then you'd be wrong. Being an undercover cop is not a 9-to-5 gig. In fact, it's something you do for amounts of time every now and then, it's not a constant thing. Remember, undercover cops live in houses given to them by the police force. If they have a family, then they have no contact with them whatsoever, as this could put them at risk. But how does an undercover cop contact the police force to give them the information they're collecting? Well, they don't go directly to the police, as this could cause them to get exposed. Instead, they only contact the police force via a handler. This handler will be someone who is specially designated to that undercover cop. The handler will be very unassuming and wear plain clothing. They may not even see the handler and instead do an information drop-off. This will be where the undercover cop drops off things like audio recordings, photographs, and files in a remote location. Then a few hours later, the handler will come by to this predetermined location and pick up the info. Sometimes the undercover cop and handler will never meet face to face. This is to maintain the security of the undercover cop and make sure they don't get exposed. And finally on the list of questions you've always wanted to ask an undercover cop, we have, can you break the law? You may think that undercover cops can break the law, and that's true in some aspects, but not in others. In many ways, undercover cops have to walk a fine line. While working in the role of an undercover cop, they're not supposed to break any crimes. Any crimes they do break have to be approved in advance. That's because it could jeopardize the entire case if they're found to be breaking the law, and the criminal they've investigated could walk free. Also, substance use is strictly prohibited. This is not only because it's against the law, but also because an undercover cop This is not only because it's against the law, but because an undercover cop could become as addicted as anyone else. And also, this could reduce their credibility as a witness and destroy the entire case. However, if it would further the investigation, they can break the law if it's been pre-approved. They would likely need to ask the police force via their handler if they can break a crime if they expect they're about to commit one. So that is the very conflicted, complex, and scary life of an undercover cop exposed. But now it's time for you to make your voice heard. Vote in the poll in the top right corner. Would you ever want to become an undercover cop? I can see it being pretty cool, but it's a bit too high risk for me. If you want some more amazing videos, then check out my second channel. There'll be a link to that on screen in a moment. But as always, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos on screen right now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Top 10s.